go through a competitive procurement process, and then we can piggyback on that for the purchase of our fire apparatus. Their agreement has been updated, and we would like to continue to participate in that program and have the council authorize the mayor's signature on the interlocal contract for cooperative purchasing.
So I have a question for you, and that is that when in the middle of the process of negotiating, do you say, hey, we've got three entities that want to buy a truck? And or do you just go in there and bid for their own, and then we just piggyback on them? I'm just kind of curious.
So the Houston Galveston Area Council, they bid all the items just on the unit price, and then we can take advantage of that contract price.
Regardless of what it is.
Regardless of how many that we order.
Right, and so even if you were like in Boston, or you're in Idaho, or you're in Galveston, Texas, you're going to still pay the same amount for that truck.
You are. I mean, if you were a larger agency and you were buying multiple units, you might look at doing your own competitive procurement because you may get better pricing on multiple units than they provide the unit pricing to this organization. But for us, where we're always purchasing one every 3 to 5 years, this really works best for us. We will be looking at purchasing the ladder truck coming up here in about a year. Which is why we're looking at renewing the agreement. Right now, it looks like it's a 42 to almost 48-month delivery period for those from order to delivery in ladder trucks. So it's going to be nearly 4 years before we see it. But we just wanted to update the agreement so that we were able to make that purchase next year.
Are there any other things that we can purchase through them besides fire trucks?
That's the only one that seems to have made sense for us. Most others can, we do try to provide priority to Idaho-based businesses as required by state law. Right. So when we're doing vehicle purchases and so forth, we are oftentimes looking at Idaho providers. This is really the only one that makes sense for us because we do not have any fire apparatus companies in the state of Idaho. Right. So we have to look to other areas, and this is our best means of purchasing those devices or those vehicles.
So my questions.
I think it's a great idea, period. I think we ought to do it. I remember the last time we signed on for this, and I think it was a good idea then, and I still do.
And I'm trying to think how often I have no concerns. I also figure it's also saving staff time for you guys to have someone else piggyback on someone else's hard negotiating time and work. How often is it normal for it to come up for renewal every couple of years?
So this one was signed back in 2017, and it's honestly it's a perpetual agreement that automatically renews. But when we were reviewing it, it was signed by a staff member, not by the mayor.
Gotcha.
And then since that time, they have updated their agreement since 2017. So the new updated agreement is in your packet. It's one of those things that once the council authorizes, then we provide the information to them. So you had kind of a blank draft copy of that agreement. They fill in the forms and then they send to us, and then the mayor executes that. So just in kind of reviewing our procurement and contracting and signatory authority, we wanted to have the mayor sign.
Yeah.
So this is partially just renewing for that purpose, but also to update the agreement to their current agreement.
Is it an amount you pay every month, every year for being part of it?
We don't pay anything to be part of it. So it's no cost to us to participate in the program.
Then who pays for it? Somebody's got to be doing the research and doing
so
the
I think the Council of
negotiation.
Governments, the Houston Galveston Council of Governments runs their program. I don't know if they get any type of financial support for that, but there is no cost for us to participate in the program.
We can argue.
And I think if I recall in 2017, the savings on a fire apparatus was $12,000 to $14,000. So it's not a dramatic amount, but it certainly is worth saving for us, and probably will be more substantial on the ladder truck. That will be approaching, 1.6 million.
Yeah, definitely.
Vehicle.
Okay, beautiful.
Great.
Can this go on consent?
It certainly can.
I'm comfortable with consent with recommended approval from the committee. Sound good? Okay.
Awesome.
And then item 3, also with Bill Belknap, Idaho Public Television Tower Lease Agreement. Idaho Public
So
TV.
you may recall back in May of this year, we had at least the same lease agreement come through for the council approval. And this is in support of the city's emergency radio project, where we'll be installing equipment on Paradise Ridge on the tower that exists there. It's owned by Idaho Public Television. Once the council approved the lease agreement in May, we then sent that off to Idaho Public Television. They had to get underneath their lease agreement. They have a site lease with the University of Idaho that owns the property the tower is constructed upon.
Oh, sure.
They, underneath the site lease, the U of I had to sign off and consent to any subleases. When they reviewed it, they felt there was a potential conflict in the site lease and limited the Idaho Public Television's use only to educational purposes, and this was emergency radios. So they went ahead and modified the site lease, and that was approved by the Board of Regents in August at their meeting. So now we have now updated the lease agreement for us. We were able to extend the term of the lease to match the site lease. It gives us, I think we had 7 years previously. This gives us more time in the lease, and that potential use conflict has now been resolved. So the agreement has just been modified slightly to extend it to match the term of the updated site lease, as well as to reflect the amendment to the site lease that is attached to the agreement as well. So nothing really significant has changed. The cost hasn't changed. The term has changed, so we now have a longer term. Otherwise, the rest of the agreement remains largely as it was previously approved by the council in May.
Good to me.
Yeah, it sounds like everyone's just doing due diligence with
Mhm.
fine tooth comb for, I guess, I don't know, liability and like you said, I was gonna say power of attorney. That's not the right phrase. Signatory authority. I'm trying to say-
Authorization.
Thank you. Signatory
right
authorization.
on.
So groovy. Great. Did staff have any concerns after?
Nope. So that can go on consent as well if the council would like to.
Sounds good. Recommend approval from the committee. Consent agenda. And then item number 4, proposed amendment to the fiscal year 2024 fee resolution.
If we might do I'm not sure in the packet, item 4 was repeal of chapter 4, title 5.
I've got
We
on
do
the
5 first?
If we could do 5 first, just because the fee resolution
I see.
follows that
I
item.
see.
Thought
Yes,
that made
yes, yes.
sense.
So
Yes.
item 5 would be proposed repeal of Moscow City Code, chapter 10, title 5, still with Bill. Take it away.
If you- So as the staff is aware, we are constantly monitoring legislative activities as it may in fact impact the city's operations. We're also constantly monitoring judicial decisions as well. There was a recent case that caused us to do a review of our internal business practices and utility practices. And out of that, we came to the conclusion that it was unclear that we had the authority to charge the streetlight utility fee that the city imposed back in 1998. So out of an abundance of caution, staff is recommending that we go ahead and repeal that chapter. Those fees have been collected to pay for the power bill essentially for street lighting. So we'll have to absorb that out of the street fund. But that is our recommendation.
Any questions?
I like, this may be the first time I'm going to say this publicly, but the statement of out of an abundance of caution, I feel like this is a real proactive moment for us. So I think this is good. Very much.
I totally agree.
Yeah, think I'm, like I just mentioned for the Idaho Public TV lease, it sounds like we're all being extra mindful of dotting our I's and crossing our T's. So I appreciate the proactive nature of taking a look at this. So I don't have any concerns. Do we all?
I think it's called, I would think of it as a response to judicial decisions
Yeah.
and that's being very proactive on that.
Yeah.
Because
Thanks for
we didn't
digging
know it
through the
existed
court.
until the court did it. And as soon as the court did it, we moved. And so I think that's really exactly where we should be.
Yep, agree. Any concerns from the committee to recommend the appeal? As
The
the-
repeal?
The appeal, repeal?
Repeal.
Recommend
That should be a
appeal.
repeal,
Yes,
yeah.
should be recommending repeal.
No, can we, is this something that has to be on regular
As the
agenda?
ordinance, it'll need to be on regular
Okay.
agenda. yes.
Okay, so regular agenda. And then back to item number 4, which would be proposed amendment to the FY 2024 fee resolution. Okay.
So this is an update to the fee resolution, really to make 2 changes. The one is to eliminate the streetlight fee reference that repealing chapter 10 of Title 5 would do. That is swapped as chapter 5 of Title 10. Anyhow, so this, we're removing the streetlight fee from the fee resolution. We also have updated our utility transfers, and because of that, we have determined that we can defer some of the sanitation rate increases that were proposed in FY 2024. So predominantly, we had the residential roll carts are going to go up 4.9%, and then the mechanical containers, which are dumpsters, are going to go down a little over 3%. With some updates to our transfers, we feel we can absorb those deferrals of those revenues for a period of time. So we are recommending to not make those increases coming up in next fiscal year. So this would amend the fee resolution that will become effective on October 1st and would eliminate the streetlight fee and reduce the sanitation increases, defer those.
residential roll carts, and what was the second one?
Mechanical containers, which
Okay.
are dumpsters.
Okay.
So the last rate study had forecast a couple of years of increases of residential roll carts and decreases of mechanical containers to equalize them to the appropriate cost of service. So in this scenario, we'll be holding roll carts static and then decreasing mechanicals by a little bit more than what was forecasted. So rather than going down 3%, they'll go down 8.4%. And residential roll carts will be held static.
And can we actually put this one on the consent agenda?
I think just in consideration of the item prior to it with the ordinance, it'd be good to have this on the regular agenda.
I'm just
Just
curious.
because it's dependent upon, elimination of street light fee is dependent upon the council approving the ordinance.
I'm just trying to figure out on Monday whether or not what day of the week, what day it is on Monday. And will we have it out by October?
Monday will be October 2nd for the council meeting, but we won't send the October billings until November.
Perfect, that's all I was
So
curious.
we
I was
have
gonna-
plenty of
I think
time
that's
to-
October 1st, or 2nd.
So we'll have plenty of time to make those changes.
And
Okay,
then my only question would be, I can't remember how we had communicated the rate study changes and forecasts for FY 2024. I don't know if there's any additional communication that we need to give for the,
We can certainly let some of the
Pause,
multifamily
but-
property owners know that it's going to go down slightly more than what they had forecast. What we had told them previously, they would have been informed that it was going to go down that 3.4%. Instead, it'll go down closer to 8%. So we can certainly let them know so they're aware of that.
does that mean that they would need to potentially, is it a deferral or is it do we need to be telling them you're not going to see it in 2024 and you may still see an increase in 2025? Or
Yeah,
are we
we're-
going to wait and see?
We're going to need to do a kind of mid-term rate study update, just with some modifications of the transfers and other operational costs. So we've seen both fuel relief coming, we've seen the larger CPIs. And so we probably will engage with FCS, the consultant that's done our utility rate studies, to take a look at these changes of transfers as well as those contractual amendments and look at what those forecasted rates and revenues should look like. At this point in time, I don't think we'll know. I suspect the deferral could last 1 or 2 years, and then we'll probably step back into our more normal rate increases, but at least it'll give some relief to property owners and residents.
Yeah, I'm more than happy. Maybe pause on the adjustments. I just am thinking through. I would hate to have rental companies be disappointed that we said get ready, we said roll it back, and then we're saying it's coming back for certain in 2025. So I appreciate that we're being proactive in the communication, and we will.
And even on the largest mechanical containers, you're talking $4 to $6, $7, $8 a month. It's not a huge, on a $300 or $400 sanitation bill. So it's not huge numbers that are really going to be impacting their operations directly.
Excellent. So items 4 and 5, both on the regular agenda then with recommended approval from the committee. Excellent. And then item number 6, Idaho County's Risk Management Program Joint Power Subscriber Agreement.
So we met with our insurance agent here just within the last 2 weeks. We were presented with a new, who is our liability and property insurance provider. So this is just conditions for every governmental entity that participates in the program. So it's just here for your review and recommendation for approval.
And I guess do they usually try to sync it with the end of fiscal year for terms and?
So this one came a little bit late this year. I think I'm not sure what caused the delay of the update. We will be
We lost a
starting.
staff member. Oh, no, I'm Idaho Association of Cities. Never mind. ICRIM didn't lose staff. You're right.
But it was a little bit late. We are starting on the new plan year coming up here in October as well. So we just need to get this reviewed and approved.
Any big changes?
Not to the joint power subscriber agreement. We did have they had a number of changes to the policy itself. Just a lot of property changes and some exclusions increased a little bit and some updates here and there. Nothing too significant, but they did have some modifications to our policy.
look good to me. I just sound curious. There's a clause in there, and I didn't write down the number of it. It says, the claims are the sole and separate obligation of the individual member. I mean, so have we ever had a problem with that at all? I mean, like what I mean by that is if another entity exceeded its number, do they ever look to everybody else to help contribute to that? Or is it just, I'm responsible as Moscow for all of our expenses?
Well, it's always a shared risk pool, and then they buy secondary insurance to cover the larger losses. So I think like any other insurance program, we're all paying in and paying our premiums, and those are all used to provide benefits to all the members. I'm not sure exactly what section were you?
It was 3, but then I never looked back up to see what the original numbers were. So I know it's 3 in parentheses, but I was just
Well, if
like,
you have any
oh,
questions, we can certainly look at it.
I can call you on that one. It just was like, I was looking at it and thought, oop, I think I forgot the beginning numbers before that, parentheses 3. Okay.
So there is in Article 4, scope of policy of insurance, item number 3, in the event that a claim or series of claims exceeds the amount of coverage provided by the member's policy of
Ah.
insurance, payment of claims expenses are the sole and separate obligation of the
There you go.
individual member. So there is a maximum cap in the liability section of $5 million per calendar year. So I think that's stating that essentially if you exceed that, either on the individual basis, which are typically, most of the liability items are 3 million individual, 2 million for legal representation, and then there's a total 5 million cap in a calendar year. I think that's just stating that if you exceed your limits, you're going to be responsible for costs above and beyond that.
Okay.
And we've not experienced that
I am
in
grateful
the
for
Amen.
that.
20 years I've been
Yeah.
here. So
I am grateful.
And here's
for
to another
Equifax.
20 years.
Any other questions or concerns, or are we comfortable recommending approval as
Looks great.
presented? And is that one
Consent.
consent?
that can go
I
on
think
consent too.
That would be good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Any other thoughts, comments, feelings, updates before we adjourn?
Nothing from staff.
All right, we are adjourned at 4:17.
Boom. There we go.
Depending on what
Thank
clock
you.
you're looking at.
I think 4 is just fine.